Joining us now, John Paul McIsaac. He's the author of the book, American Injustice, My Battle to Expose the Truth, and he is the owner of the Mac repair shop where Hunter Biden abandoned his laptop. Also joining us is John's attorney, Brian Della Rocca. It's great to have you both on, gentlemen. Thanks for spending your Monday night with us. First to you, John, what is your reaction to Hunter Biden's legal threats against you and his critics about disseminating information from the laptop that Hunter Biden left at your repair shop? What do you make of those threats, John?
Well, I view them as exactly what they are. They're threats. Hunter doesn't seem to remember that he came into my shop. He hired me to recover data from his laptop, and he never paid, and he never came and picked it up. So I had permission, and when he failed to collect it and it became my property, I tried to hand it over to the authorities multiple times.
Did your store have say, a 90-day policy where any property left behind then belongs to you in the store?
Yes, and I explained that policy with every customer, but with Hunter at length.
Okay, so Brian, so here's the thing. John's forced to flee Delaware. You guys filed a defamation lawsuit against President Biden and his campaign in 2020. And now Hunter Biden's legal team, they first appeared to confirm the authenticity of his laptop in a letter threatening legal action, Brian, and then they tried to backtrack 24 hours later. We've got numerous media authenticating the laptop, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. And now they're going to Hunter Biden's father's administration, the DOJ, the IRS, and the Delaware Attorney General to go after John? What do you make of all that?
Well, I really think it's just a scare tactic, honestly. They're doing exactly what I imagine Hunter probably wanted to do from the beginning. They're now starting to attack. And they can attack all they want, but it's not going to change the truth. We have the truth. They just they have a bunch of made-up facts that they're using to support their argument because they know a lot of people are going to believe them no matter what they say. But we have the actual facts, and I'm ready to go head-to-head with them.
There's a real sense of, critics say, of entitlement around Hunter Biden and what his family did in selling access. If Hunter Biden sues, Brian, will you get Hunter to sit down for a deposition? And if you do, what would you ask him?
Well, absolutely. That would be part of the discovery process. And one of the first things I would ask him is where he was during that week of April 2019. I would also ask him for receipts because he wasn't in John Paul's store once. He was in there twice. The second time, he came back with the external hard drive onto which John Paul transferred the information. So I'd have to ask him for his credit card receipts to see what he purchased during that period of time. There's a lot of information that no one has asked him about, and I will be asking him about it.
And also what is revealed in the laptop that's been authenticated by multiple media about the Biden family selling access. Would you ask him about that under oath?
I would have to see how it could help the case, but possibly. I mean, really, the case would be about what he said about John Paul, and I would have to focus on that. But it would give me the opportunity to ask him a lot of questions. Now, that doesn't mean he would tell the truth. We know that he has a tendency to bend the truth or outright lie, but I would definitely try to get exactly what I needed out of him for our case.
John, what would you ask him, John? What would you want Congress to know about this story with the laptop? What would you ask? What would you want Hunter Biden to be asked under oath?
Well, a first question would be, why didn't you come and pick it up? My life would not be completely upside down, and I wouldn't have death threats. I wouldn't have had to flee my home and my business if he had just admitted that the laptop was his. So I would really like to know what was his motivation for perpetuating the lie that this was all part of some Russian disinformation or that it could be hacked, it could be stolen. Because my life would be considerably different if he had owned up and just told the truth from the get-go and paid his bill.
John, what you're saying is very important, right? I mean, by the way, Jonathan Turley, he's a legal expert. He says Hunter's lawyer is simply wrong. Telling Congress there's no legislative purpose in getting information on the Biden family's alleged influence peddling that could involve the president himself. I mean, we've seen Congress launch corruption investigations involving politicians dating back to the 1790s through the early 1900s to the Teapot Dome scandal and the Trump family business interest, John McIsaac. So when you hear all of that and when you saw that letter come out from Hunter Biden's legal team, what was your initial reaction?
Well, my initial reaction is the flack's always heaviest when you're over the target. The pressure that Brian and I have been putting on Hunter for the past couple months finally caught up to him. He finally was just served a couple Fridays ago, and this was his retaliation for that. I think that I'm leaving a lot in the hands of Congress. I really hope that they can pursue accountability and justice. Because a lot of these matters, they're not just me. It's sure I was wronged, and that's why we're going after them with a defamation case. But the country on a whole is suffering and has suffered from our alphabet agencies working with our mainstream and social media, and that needs to be addressed and that needs to be resolved. So what happens to me and what happens to the country doesn't happen again. Yeah,
that's an important point. Brian, I'd like to get your reaction, given what John just said. Let's watch House Oversight Chair James Comer on ABC this weekend. Watch this.
The difference between Jared Kushner and Hunter Biden is that Jared Kushner actually sat down and was interviewed. He was interviewed by investigators, so he's already been investigated. Thus far, Hunter Biden's attorneys, the president's attorneys, the president's White House, they're doing everything they can to block our investigation. Hopefully, the Biden family will be as cooperative as Jared Kushner with our investigation as they were with the January 6th investigation and all the other investigations of the Trump administration. I think that there can be a bipartisan legislative solution, but we can't get to that point until we know the extent of what the Biden family influence peddling involved, especially with respect to communist China.
What do you say, Brian?
Well, I think there has to be an investigation. I think he needs to come to the table and he needs to testify. Even if it's a closed-door session, he needs to be interviewed. And I think this could lead the way for some really good legislation that would be beneficial to the American public. And it has nothing to do with party, has everything to do with corruption. And I hope Congress continues with their efforts.
That's an important point. John, your final word.
Well, I just want to say that I was never built for any of this. And I want to just thank all your listeners that have shown their support and given their prayers, because that's given me the strength to continue this fight, and I'm not going to quit. If this is the hill, this is the hill.
John Paul McIsaac, Brian Della Rocca, we'll stay on this story. We'll be covering it in coming months. It's good to have you both on, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.